So let's talk about hypocrisy. Why do the Democrats get a free pass on impeaching judges, Supreme Court justices, but yet the Republicans are getting throttled by the media? Anyone? Anyone? Raise of hands. Oh, I would say that would be the media bias. But let's talk about that. So the argument presented suggests that there is a double standard in how calls for judicial impeachment are treated, with Republicans facing more pushback, a heck of a lot more news about it than the Democrats. Let's recall AOC 2021, 2022, when the Roe v. Wade was overturned. It highlights that while Chief Justice John Roberts swiftly condemned the Republican calls for Judge James Boasberg impeachment, it's too late. He remained silent when Democrats previously called for the impeachment of conservative justices like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. This perceived inconsistency has fueled the Republican frustrations, reinforcing the belief that the judicial system is biased against them. Critiques of the media and political establishment for focusing overwhelmingly on Trump's supposed norm breaking while ignoring or downplaying similar behavior from Democrats is inexcusable. The claim is that this one-sided narrative exasperates polarization and encourages Republicans to escalate their tactics in response. And let's not just say the Republicans. How about those people that tend to be a little uber enthusiastic over MAGA and anti-judiciary? Yes, we know people like that. I have friends that are that way. This in turn feeds that Trump's broader strategy of pushing against institutional norms in Washington, destroying democracy, which his supporters view as necessary to counteract a system that they see rigged against them. Remember, that is the one thing that Trump has been genius, instrumental, brilliant at, is that his ability to connect with the average person. Here is a man that born into a wealthy family, silver spoon, does not have lifestyle-wise similarities to his base, but he has been able to target in and speak their language, feel their pain. So rather than placing sole blame on Trump and his allies, both sides have contributed to this erosion of judicial norms. The judiciary's response to Trump's challenges has at times been equally reactionary, further inflaming these tensions. The lack of an even-handed approach, particularly from judges that may be seen as more extremely blue districts, convinces the conservatives that their only option is to fight back even harder, leading to a cycle of escalating political conflict and hence get your brackets out. The historical context of judicial battles is also invoked, noting that these power struggles are not new. Fights over judicial influence have been ongoing since at least the Lyndon Johnson era, and both parties have engaged in efforts to reshape the court to their advantage. Remember, it was just the last administration they were calling for, stack the courts, just add a bunch of seats and put in a bunch of liberal judges that will go their way, which is not the purpose of the Supreme Court justices. Remember, they are supposed to look at the laws, look at what is being presented to them, and see if it's constitutional or not. The main difference now is the heightened partisanship and the perception that one side is consistently allowed to break the rules without consequence. Unless both sides recognize and address this imbalance, the legitimacy of the judiciary will continue to erode in many people's eyes. The claim that Trump's actions, while unconventional, are not occurring in a vacuum. The responses to a system that conservatives believe is already stacked against them. I mean, this is just heightening that level. And this is a time we need to de-escalate. And this clash is continuing down onto Judge Darrell Howell, who is stating that the Justice Department is attacking her character to impugn the integrity of U.S. judicial system. So U.S. District Judge Howell and the Trump administration are yet another example of the deepening tensions between the executive branch and the judiciary branch. Both branches of the government, separate but equal powers. These are the checks and balances. Civics, basic civics, people. Howell's strong response suggests she sees the Justice Department's attempt to remove her as part of a broader effort to delegitimize the courts when they rule against the president's agenda. The Justice Department's claim that Howell has demonstrated a pattern of hostility toward Trump is notable, as it aligns with the administration's frequent accusations that certain judges are politically motivated. However, Judge Howell pushes back by asserting that it is the role of the judiciary, not the executive, to determine the legality of presidential actions. Her language is striking, especially when she accuses the DOJ of employing ad hominem attacks to undermine judicial independence. The broader context is important here. Trump has long expressed frustration with the courts, particularly when they block his executive orders. In this case, the dispute revolves around Howell's ruling against an executive order punishing a law firm, Perkins Coie, which played a role in funding opposition research against Trump during the 2016 election. I mean, isn't that exactly what he ran for, saying that he was being persecuted, that we were turning into a banana republic because the judiciary was being turned out onto political opponents? This would be similar. It would. Unless there is significant proof beyond probable cause that this firm actually elicited and did something illegal, okay. But it is in the court's purview to see whether or not the executive orders that are coming out like they are on a copy machine are within the powers of the executive administrative powers, the executive branch, is absolutely right. And there is an appellate process. Judicial recusals typically require clear evidence of bias or conflict of interest. That's basically greater than a preponderance in evidence, which is, just slightly tipping the scales, if you will, on the old-fashioned scale. It is actually clear and convincing that it has to be almost just under reasonable doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. And Howell argues that the DOJ's request is based on speculation rather than legal grounds. So again, this fighting, this criticism, this infighting, we got to figure out how to rein it in. But this rhetoric that's being used, not just by Trump, we're used to the Trump rhetoric. I mean, Trump loves his, truths, his posts. I mean, but Pam Bundy, I'm a little shocked because I was expecting better from her. And as Trump and his allies are pushing to impeach the judges, Speaker Mike Johnson is eyeing an escape hatch. Now, remember, Mike Johnson is a constitutional law lawyer. He is a lawyer that specializes in constitutional law and fighting on those issues. So House Speaker Mike Johnson faces increasing pressure from Donald Trump and his allies to pursue the impeachment. However, rather than pursuing politically risky impeachment votes, which, by the way, most likely won't happen because of the Senate, Johnson and other House Republicans are rallying around a legislative alternative. Representative Darrell Issa's No Rogue Rulings Act seeks to prevent district court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions, a tactic that has repeatedly stalled Trump's executive actions. Johnson has backed the bill as a way to address conservative frustrations while avoiding direct impeachment efforts and from, having time spent or wasted on failed impeachment processes when, what could honestly help all of these executive orders? If the congressional members actually took up some bills and passed legislation that would coincide with what Trump's and many Republicans' stances were when they were going for re-election or election anew. Johnson, and as I stated, a former constitutional attorney, has signaled reluctance to pursue impeachment, instead advocating for using the appeals process to challenge rulings. While acknowledging that judicial overreach is a problem, he has emphasized that impeachment is an extraordinary measure and the Republicans must consider alternatives. Of course, then you still have the rabble risers, the saber rattlers of like Jim Jordan, who are basically wanting impeachment, but at least he's saying Jim Jordan does support this bill as a way to counteract judicial obstruction without engaging in a fight that they are unlikely to win. Though many Republicans are remaining cautious about impeachment, but they are dealing with the Trump factor and they don't want to piss off Trump or his followers. Moderate Republicans like Representative Don Bacon argued that impeachment should be reserved for judges who engage in misconduct such as bribery rather than issuing unfavorable rulings. Similarly, Representative Frank Lucas has warned that impeaching judges now could backfire when Democrats regain control, and they will regain control. It happens all the time. Issa's bill will be going up for vote very soon in the House, and it is expected to go to the Senate. Now, if it passes the Senate, we'll see. The House, basically to pass the House, the Republicans all have to get in step. Ultimately, this battle over the judiciary underscores the broader tensions. The executive branch versus the judiciary, along with the legislative branch, and it's like 2 against 1, and it's not a fair gang fight. We're going to take a quick break and let's talk a little Schoolhouse Rock in our next segment.